We need to have a sense of identity that remains stable and consistent. What we do needs to make sense and fit reasonably with how we've acted before. That means when we talk to each other and we do things together, what we do and say has to stay within certain limits. It would be really scary for people if they just never quite knew how you were going to react. You'd be always doing something that they didn't expect to happen. If you were unreliable, volatile, constantly changing your mind, and always different, you wouldn't find that many people who are wanting to stay being your friend. What they need is somebody that they know that they can reliably get on with. So all the things that I believe and do need to fit a cohesive pattern that makes sense. Who I am needs to be reasonably stable and consistent. We do need a bit of unpredictability in our lives. It makes life interesting, and it's actually by making changes that we grow and mature. But underneath that, we need a solid foundation. You might be aware of a voice that keeps chatting away in your head. It's called self-talk. It goes on all day. We have a continuous flow of thoughts and ideas about our experiences. Now, that flow of thoughts builds internal stories about ourselves and our experiences and structures them into a consistent and stable sense of identity. We need to have a story that shows ourselves as worthwhile and capable. We like to see ourselves as basically good people, and we do care about what other people think of us. So we build a collection of stories that creates an image of who we think we are. Every new experience is compared to that story in our head. And if there's a clash between our story and what's happening in the world, we've got two choices. The best response is to change our story so it fits what is happening in the world. The other response is to keep the story. We make the world wrong so that we can still be right. Now, there's a saying, the map is not the territory. Okay, so we draw a map of a piece of land. The territory is like the world we experience, and the map is like the story in our head. We use the map to know where to go. The more we decide the map is right and the territory is wrong, the more we're going to get lost. And we will just keep on getting lost until we finally change our map so that it is an accurate representation of the territory. So until our story fits what the world is really like, we're going to keep on having things going wrong. Some things that we experience make us happy, and we're willing to make them a part of ourselves, a part of our map. We formulate happy stories about them. But other things that happen don't sit as well with us, and we try to push them away. They might be embarrassing, painful, depressing, and scary. So we create a story about why we push them away that fits within the story we have about ourselves that we've already created. So a friend might have said, "Oh, you didn't play that well in tennis yesterday." Now, you might be okay about that because you know you're just a learner. But if you're a good tennis player, it hurts sometimes to be told that you're not being good at playing tennis. So often we will form a story that enables us to maintain the image of ourselves as a good tennis player. Now, it might be true or partly true, but often it's just a story. We might say to ourselves things like, "Oh, it was just a one-off. I'm usually a very good player." Or, "I was really tired because I stayed up late last night." Or, "I really haven't recovered from that old injury that I had." Or, getting worse, "Who's he to say that I'm not a good player? He was really bad and he really messed up last week." Or, "Why should I listen to her? She's just being jealous." We all have a lifetime of practice writing stories about ourselves that leave us as the hero who knows the best, or else the victim of somebody else's misdeeds. We're always right, they're always wrong. And our stories tend to increasingly justify why we are right and the other person is wrong. We magnify the things that we do right and overlook our errors, while we exaggerate the errors of others and overlook their good points. We increasingly interpret evil motives to other people's actions. Our story now identifies us as the victim of other evil people who treat us unfairly. And once we tell ourselves that story a few times, we come to believe it, we then have a justifiable reason for retaliating against the perceived injustice. And especially if the other person has got a similar story being told in their head about them being the victim, the situation can very quickly escalate into violence. Now, in my work, I regularly hear stories to justify violent behaviour. She should have known not to answer me back. He should have just walked away. Nobody talks to me like that. If it wasn't for the alcohol, they just got what they deserve. If we never tune in to the stories that we are creating and ask ourselves whether the stories actually still work for us, then we will just recreate the same old stories from the past, and the things that we reject and push away will just keep coming back to us. Alternatively, we can choose to look at ourselves and honestly see where we succeed and where we fail at being the person we would like to be. Now, if we can make those changes ourselves, the world will respond differently. People will eventually see the changes that we've made and respond. But if we fail to do that, the world will keep sending us experiences that point out the difference. If we have the internal discipline to change our lives, we do not need an external discipline like the police appearing in our lives. Being fully honest with ourselves and making changes is hard and uncomfortable work. We have the choice of looking at ourselves as we are, accepting our imperfections, and looking at ways that we can learn to cope differently. A good starting point is recognizing our justifying statements and choosing to say more helpful things to ourselves about ourselves. As we repeat our new story over and over, the new story will eventually replace the old one, and the situations in our life will improve.